Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Bradford, in your testimony, did I understand you right? So that you want to end all plastic manufacturing?
I said the plastics industry must be stopped.
So does that mean end plastic manufacturing?
I mean, in my dream world, sure, but I think that, go ahead.
No, so I don't mean to be condescending here. I just point out, what's going to replace your glasses? Like,
So
why
I
would you wear
do
your
know,
glasses around your face? They're made of plastic.
maybe.
No,
I don't know what they're made out of.
They are. What
So-
about, and I'm just pointing out some things here, because I just want to be realistic when we're having conversations, because when statements are made like this, I just want to open people's eyes and say, well, okay, that's easy to say, but what's the solution? Your water bottle in front of you.
This one?
Yes. That plastic?
No.
The lid is. That's plastic.
Right. So
Right.
I would say to your
cell phone-
question that I would first be concerned about single-use plastics, and then we can talk about alternatives to this.
Your cell phone there. Is it plastic?
The cases, but it's glass because I broke
Oh, the components
the
inside of it's
screen
not
yesterday.
plastic? The components made out of it's not in plastic? Yeah, they are. The water that you filled that water bottle up with, where'd you fill that water bottle up out of?
A water filling station.
All right, and it was delivered by a drink station that was plastic?
I didn't check.
The edges are. The piping coming to it. Now, you have a couple choices with the piping. We could go back to using wood, but then you have to line it in chemical. Or we could go back and use lead, because we used to have water piping that was lead. That was harmful to us. We go back to galvanized, but galvanized rust and had discoloration. We go back to copper, but copper has to be mined, and everybody wants to stop mining in the U.S. So you use plastic to deliver piping that you fill that water bottle up with today. I point this out because the clothes you have on, I guarantee you have plastic in it. The shoes you have on your feet, the soles of those shoes are plastic. So we talk about any plastic manufacturing, and everybody in here cheers when you say that, but everybody here is depending on plastic as you set. So if you want to end it, then quit using it. It's kind of like, I don't want to shop at certain places right now because I don't agree with some of their policies. I choose not to do that. You can choose to not use plastic. Do your work. If you believe it, then live it that way. And if not, then tell me what the solution is. Mr. Sunday, can you manufacture a car today without plastic? Because we talked about manufacturing, the chairman brought up manufacturing cars as it is safe, but the components that go into the cars today, can you do that without plastic?
No, Senator, and increasingly so with the new mileage mandates. You increasingly need to use automotive components that are plastics derived.
So we wouldn't have manufacturing, today's modern manufacturing, if we didn't have plastics, correct?
Correct.
Ms. Jackson, do you agree with that statement?
Yes.
So what's the alternative for manufacturing? Because the Democrats talk about middle-class wages. Middle-class wages typically come directly from manufacturing. What is it that we're manufacturing that doesn't have plastic in it today?
Nothing. And you know what? It would increase the cost of everything if we turn to an alternative, and it would disproportionately impact low-income people who have lower incomes. It would be another regressive tax on the poor.
So according to your testimony, Ms. Jackson, it sounds like you're saying that the environmental justice agenda does more harm than good for low-income families. Is that correct?
Yes. And, you know, I have the unique opportunity to see both sides when the industry comes in the area and when it doesn't. As an auditor, I worked on Nissan North America. Nissan North America moved to Smyrna, Tennessee, where it built the largest automotive manufacturing plants. And the transformation was astonishing. I mean, it went from a community that was poor to a community that U.S. World News voted one of the top 10 places to retire. You had poor people in areas that were poor that became middle class. You had middle class people that became upper middle class, and a lot of upper middle class people that became affluent. They have attractions, they have amenities, they have housing, affordability. I mean, the amount of prosperity in that area has resonated out 3 counties. 3 counties. I've also had the opportunity to see when an industrial, and that wouldn't happen if you don't have an industrial complex moving into the area where you're talking about high economics. I've also seen the other side where all of a sudden you have deteriorating buildings, empty storefronts, dilapidated housing, people standing on street corner housing, that families that are broken. So we need to balance the fact that people's lives need economic upward mobility. And we can't just say, we're going to take out an industry and leave people poorer than they were. Poverty causes the worst health care in this country. Poverty is the one that destroys lives. It destroys health. It creates trauma. So we need to make sure that when we're talking about these issues, we take into account the human loss of life, not just the environmental impacts.
Thank you. Thanks for your indulgence there.
It's a crisis in our country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Mullin.
Yeah, I just want to follow up with Ms. Bradford. You stated you're against single-use plastics. What specifically are you pointing at for single-use? What products are you talking about?
Thanks. So definitely straws, definitely plastic bottles. I won't say anything else because I can't think of anything else right now.
So are you for recycling and advanced recycling?
No, because it doesn't work and it doesn't happen.
Well, then in your case and everything, single use at that point. If you're not for recycling, then you can't say you're against single use and you're okay with everything else. Because if you're against
I'm
it,
for
you're against
facts,
all of it.
and I think only 9% worldwide are actually recycled.
That's why I say that we should focus more on recycling. Because if you can tell me you're for recycling, then maybe we can work to something. Because a while ago you did say you wasn't against all of it because you got to be realistic, but you're against single use because that's what the chairman asked you. And so if you're against single use, then you must be for recycling.
No, because it doesn't work.
Well, then that doesn't make any sense at all.
Okay.
Because you can't exist without plastic today. We've already pointed that out. And so I don't know what the alternative is. And we talk about this all the time. It's like Ms. Levin mentioned that that glass is an alternative. But if you remember, sir, at our last hearing we had on plastic, for the record, I submitted the McKinsey and Company study that showed that actually plastic has a less carbon footprint than glass. So where are we moving towards? What is it that we want to look to? If we're still for the middle class, and we got to have manufacturing, we pointed that out, that we can't do without it. We're against it, but yet everybody here is using it. I just see a lot of people having a thought process because it sounds good, but no one's actually living by what you believe.
I don't have any single-use plastics in my house.
You know that for a fact?
I know that for a fact because
What products do you not have? What products? Because you just mentioned water bottles.
I don't have water bottles like that in my house.
But most of these water bottles are actually recycled, including the one that I'm having.
So I am a masochist and I do participate in recycling. I just know that it doesn't work internationally. It's not adding up.
Well, I would suggest you maybe doing your homework a little bit more when you come up here and you start talking about this stuff, that you actually understand what it is, the impact that you're talking about.
I do my homework. I do understand the impact.
can't-
I do know I'm wasting my time recycling because most of it's not recycled.
Then,
And that's because of the industry. And the fact
Okay.
that plastic is in everything is because the industry forced us to have
then
it.
quit using plastics.
Well, the industry should stop making them.
Quit using them. If you feel that way, then
I
quit.
do. I just told you I do not have single-use plastic bottles in my house. I
But
do what
you're
I
against-
can.
Hold on a second. You're against all plastic, but you have plastic all around you. So if you're against plastic, then don't use it. live by what you're saying. There's a lot of people around here that I disagree with, but if you live it,
I do live
I
it.
respect it. Ma'am, you don't, because you have plastic on your face, you have plastic on the water bottle, you have plastic on your
I
feet,
do
you have
not
plastic on
own
your-
companies to create these things. So I cannot make these things. But until they are available, we're stuck with some things. I do what I can.
Do you believe in? Do you believe that we should have solar systems, or not solar systems, but we should have solar panels on our house?
I do, but I'm here to talk about
So solar panels.
what's
made
on the
out of plastic.
agenda.
I mean, they are.
And they're also not single use.
Neither is just bottle. Let's go to Mr. Sunday. In your opening statement, you mentioned shale gas was a big reason why United States have led the world in CO2 reduction because the energy and natural gas liquids in our manufacturing is less emission intense than overseas manufacturing, especially compared to countries like China. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, as I mentioned, Clean Air Task Force looked at the methane intensities, and shale gas in Appalachia has the lowest leakage of any basin in the world. And the increased use of natural gas produced in that region, including Pennsylvania, has been estimated to be about 60% of the reason why we led the world in reducing emissions as a country since '05. So big picture, the issue is how do you reduce emissions, keep costs down, and be reliable? That's the long-term challenge. The short-term challenge is every country out there that's relying on Russian oil and gas, we should be doing everything we can to get our energy over there because it's also going to be used more sustainably. Because I can guarantee you, and you can see the Boston Globe feature from a couple years ago when an LNG tanker came into Boston. When we got shale gas in northeast Pennsylvania, it's the most prolific in the world. I definitely want the producer standards in my state versus Putin's regime. We saw what that led to.
Do you know what the difference between the two standards are?
It's an order of magnitude. I mean, it's so much so that even if you count for transportation across a tanker, shale gas in the U.S. shipped across the seas is more sustainable than pipe coming in from Russia.
Because they're not using electricity in the ships to bring them here. They have combustible motors in them.
Right. Yes, sir.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. And trucks to get them to point A to point B, since we can't build pipelines in the East Coast right now.
Right.
With that, sir, I'll yield back.
Thank you very much.